This is Pueblo Bonito in Chaco Canyon. They have evidence and they dug down and they found proof.
Our culture, now, with all of our technology and advancements, we could not replicate this.
Scientists have just uncovered evidence beneath Chaco Canyon that completely rewrites human history in North America.
Noted as a World Heritage Site. So we're very proud of the fact that this is probably one of the best kept secrets in America.
What they found was never supposed to exist. Traces of engineering and cosmic alignment that seem far too advanced for a civilization over 1,000 years old. Using new LiDAR and soil analysis, researchers have detected massive underground structures and unexplained energy patterns stretching for miles. These findings have left historians, archaeologists, and even physicists arguing about what kind of knowledge the Chacoans really possessed. In this video, we're going to break down the shocking new discovery that has left scientists both amazed and terrified at what truly lies beneath Chaco Canyon. For centuries, Chaco Canyon was thought to be nothing more than a collection of ancient ruins. But new LiDAR scans and forensic analysis are changing that view completely. Imagine building 4-story sandstone cities in an almost waterless desert and transporting 200,000 heavy beams across 75 kilometers without wheels or draft animals. Today, evidence proves these weren't random constructions. They were parts of a canyon engineered as a single, functioning system. The hidden design is finally being uncovered. But just how precise was this engineering, and what secrets still lie buried in the stone? Pueblo Bonito rises from the canyon floor like something from another time. It's a 4-story stone complex stretching nearly 2 acres, containing more than 650 rooms arranged in a sweeping D shape. Its walls, nearly a meter thick at the base, once surrounded plazas, storage vaults, and ceremonial chambers so vast that echoes still carry through their shadows. This was not a small settlement. It was a major feat of planning and construction, a structure that would have stood out even by modern standards. But Pueblo Bonito was more than an isolated marvel. It was the center of a network that extended far beyond the canyon. Across the San Juan Basin, other sites mirrored its design. Great houses shared the same type of stonework, plazas, and ceremonial kivas, all organized with clear precision. Plazas faced south. Room blocks reflected each other across central axes. Each complex contained hundreds of rooms, not just a handful. The scale is staggering. While most ancient southwestern settlements were clusters of homes, Chaco's builders raised multi-story structures that could house entire communities under one roof. The canyon itself became a hub, part ceremonial center, part logistical base, and part political heart. Great houses such as Chetro Kettle and Jungo Pavi, each with enormous footprints, joined Pueblo Bonito to anchor a network that stretched hundreds of kilometers. Shrines and signal towers marked distant mesas, while straight roads, some running perfectly for dozens of kilometers, connected the central core with its outer sites. Every line, angle, and plaza placement points to careful coordination rarely seen in the ancient world. For the people who created and sustained the system, Chaco was far more than a home. It was a landscape built for gathering, storing, ceremony, and control. The architecture became a physical expression of unity, ambition, and the power to reshape the desert into something lasting. Pueblo Bonito and its connected network didn't just occupy space, they redefined it. Inside Pueblo Bonito, the engineering reveals itself one layer at a time. The signature method, known as core and veneer masonry, went well beyond simple stacking. At the center of each wall was a dense mix of rubble and mud mortar, a material that would crumble if left exposed. On both sides, skilled masons carefully placed shaped sandstone blocks, creating a protective shell that locked everything together. This outer veneer wasn't decorative, it was functional. It shielded the inner core from rain and moisture and helped distribute the structure's weight evenly down to the ground. A masonry expert examining samples from the north wall noted how the outer stones were carefully interlocked with the inner core rather than simply placed against it. Modern micro-CT scans confirm that the pattern mirrors principles used in modern engineering, a water-resistant exterior designed to absorb weathering so that the core remains dry and stable. This was no accident of survival. It was deliberate construction meant to manage risk and preserve integrity over centuries. Historical accounts from the 1896 Hyde exploring expedition describe the surprise of early archaeologists when they cut into these walls and found layers of rough stones and mud hidden behind the smooth outer surface. Their diaries mention Navajo tracker Chiatoy, whose local knowledge helped guide them through the maze of rooms. While the explorers debated the purpose of such construction, regional oral histories already recognized the importance of keeping water away from valuable building materials. The result is a structure built to endure for centuries. Even after the roofs collapsed and the upper stories fell, the lower walls, sometimes nearly a meter thick, remained standing. The pattern of sandstone courses, often alternating in color and size, provided both strength and a sense of order. This technique, repeated across dozens of great houses, explains why so much of the original masonry has survived 1,000 years of weather and neglect. The walls of Chaco aren't just remnants, they're proof of a calculated strategy to outlast both the desert and time itself. The secret to Chaco's vertical design lies in how every layer and load was planned from the foundation up. Structural studies of the great houses reveal a pattern. The thickest walls, often exceeding a meter at the base, supported the lower levels, forming a stable foundation for the stories above. As the walls rose, they gradually narrowed in measured steps. This tapering wasn't caused by erosion or later repair. It was an intentional method to balance weight and stability. The terraced arrangement of room blocks helped spread pressure evenly, directing it downward and outward instead of letting it concentrate in one place. Structural analysts studying Pueblo Bonito's wall profiles have noted the symmetry built into the design. The lower rooms weren't just larger, they were reinforced with double-thick walls at corners and intersections. The upper floors, made with thinner walls and smaller spans, reduced the strain on each level. This created a system where the heaviest components stayed closest to the ground, and each story above grew lighter, giving the impression that the structure was breathing as it rose. Roofing presented its own challenge. Pine beams, often more than 4 meters long, were laid side by side across the upper walls, then topped with smaller saplings and packed earth. This formed a layered and durable roof, strong but heavy, so the walls beneath needed to be sturdy enough to resist shifting weight and outward pressure. The original layouts of Pueblo Bonito and its sister great houses demonstrate this same logic. Room blocks were built in mirrored rows, with central corridors and plazas that distributed force evenly throughout the base. These weren't random stacks of stone. They were the work of builders who, through experience and tradition, learned how to use mass and gravity to their advantage. You can still see the results today. Where the base walls remain intact, sections of upper masonry still stand above them, defying centuries of erosion. The gradual tapering of the walls, the carefully arranged rooms, and the symmetry across the entire structure show a level of planning far beyond simple shelter. Chaco's great houses were built to endure, and their surviving walls after 1,000 years stand as lasting proof of that intent. In the shadow of Chaco's massive stone walls, the real challenge wasn't only building upward, it was transporting the very bones of those structures from distant mountains far beyond the horizon. Dendrochronologists, equipped with increment borers and field notebooks, pieced together the story through the rings of ancient beams. Their results were clear. Over 70% of the timbers used in the great houses came from forests located at least 75 kilometers away in the Chusca and Zuni Mountains. These weren't small logs. Each main beam stretched nearly 16 feet long, cut from ponderosa pine or Douglas fir, and weighed close to 150 kilograms when freshly felled. There were no wagons, pack animals, or rivers to carry them, only human strength and coordination. Early lab studies in the 1980s fueled debate when isotopic data and tree ring evidence pointed away from the canyon's sparse pinyon juniper woodlands. Newer research has only confirmed those findings. Strontium isotope testing identified the beam's mountain origins, while tree ring counts established the construction timeline. The first building phases relied on forests closer to the Zuni Range, but as the 11th century began and construction expanded, timber sources shifted westward to the Chuscas. This wasn't random collection, it was a deliberate, phased extraction. Forest zones were opened, harvested, and then abandoned once the need for straight, mature trees outpaced the forest's ability to regrow. The logistics behind it are staggering. Experimental archaeologists wanted to understand what it took, so they organized modern carrying trials. Groups of 6 to 8 volunteers using shoulder poles and tump lines transported replica beams across rough desert terrain. Even with modern gear, hydration, and rest, exhaustion set in within a few kilometers. Shoulders bruised, backs strained, and the pace slowed dramatically. Teams had to rotate every few miles, mirroring what must have been an ancient relay system, resting, regrouping, and pushing on again. Moving a single beam could take several days from mountain to canyon. Multiply that by the estimated 200,000 beams used across the great houses, and the scale of organization becomes clear. It was a supply network comparable to those of ancient states, powered by planning and determination. Archaeological surveys along these ancient routes have uncovered traces, clusters of stone flakes and woodworking debris near mountain edges, suggesting the logs were trimmed and stripped of bark before being moved. Temporary campsites marked by hearths and discarded tools appear at distances matching a day's journey. These remains aren't random, they are the physical echoes of an operation that spanned years and generations. The laborers themselves are absent from written records, but their effort lives on in the beams that still rest overhead. Each timber, cut with stone tools and carried across open desert, stands as proof of coordination and shared purpose. The movement of timber wasn't only about physical endurance, it was a complex logistical task requiring constant communication between the forests and the canyon, along with systems for moving workers, food, and materials. The roads linking Chaco to its outer settlements take on new meaning, not just as ceremonial paths, but as vital routes for the flow of people and resources. The next step in Chaco engineering would rely heavily on these corridors carved through both desert and memory. LiDAR mapping has reshaped our understanding of their construction, uncovering a network of roads that challenge both the terrain and expectations. These were not faint trails. The data shows corridors up to 9 meters wide, carved directly into the sandstone. The roads stretch straight for kilometers, cutting across mesas and arroyos, sometimes branching into parallel tracks that remain perfectly aligned for vast distances. At the gas site, located 70 kilometers south of the canyon, digital elevation models reveal 2 parallel roads, each as wide as a modern 2-lane highway. Their edges remain sharp even after 1,000 years of erosion. A LiDAR analyst working before dawn described the moment the twin roads first appeared in the scan. It was unmistakable. The shadows told the story. The roads could be traced for over 6 kilometers, cutting across what looks today like nothing more than scrubland and rock. Within hours, the team verified the presence of ramps and carved stairways where the roads climbed or descended natural slopes, features invisible on the surface but clear in the precise digital data. The construction scale is intentional. No sign of wheels or draft animals has ever been found at Chaco on-sites. These enormous roads were far too wide for simple footpaths. Their creation required removing tons of bedrock, building embankments, and shaping stone steps to span steep inclines. In some areas, the roads are bordered by low berms or marked with crescent-shaped stone formations known as herraduras, shrines or markers placed along the route. Soil compaction tests and scattered artifacts indicate light, infrequent use rather than the deep wear left by heavy traffic, suggesting these were not trade routes for daily transport but served another purpose entirely. Drone surveys and ground inspections confirmed what LiDAR revealed. The roads do not always follow the easiest terrain. Instead, they maintain strict alignments, often climbing over obstacles instead of curving around them. Cross-sections from the gas site show raised embankments that maintain even grades and carved stairways where the terrain drops sharply. In some places, the twin roads split apart for hundreds of meters before reconnecting, yet their symmetry remains exact. Field notes capture both excitement and confusion. Why build such wide, straight roads without carts or animals? What purpose justified such massive labor? The answers aren't found in traditional signs of transportation. There are no cargo depots, no loading platforms, and no wheel ruts. Instead, the roads suggest another idea: structures built for visibility, monumentality, and perhaps ceremonial movement. Their size and design show a society determined to reshape the landscape itself, leaving behind messages carved in stone that would outlast them. The LiDAR findings expand our understanding of Chacoan engineering, stretching its reach far beyond the canyon's great houses into the open desert. The roads link distant outliers, shrines, and the canyon core, forming a network that was both functional and symbolic. As the analyst scrolls through the digital terrain, the patterns grow more defined. These are not the result of erosion or animal trails. They are deliberate, carefully built, and monumental. They show a vision that saw Chaco not as an isolated site, but as the center of a landscape designed for both movement and meaning. Summer storms roll through Chaco Canyon with little warning, flooding dry washes before disappearing and leaving the land dry again. For the ancestral Puebloans, survival meant more than waiting for the rain. It required creating systems that could manage nature's extremes and turn unpredictability into stability. During the Bonito phase between 800 and 1130 AD, the builders of Chaco created a network of canals, check dams, diversion gates, and terrace fields that turned the canyon's harsh water system into a carefully managed resource. A geoarchaeologist, with boots covered in red silt, kneels beside a shallow channel barely visible in the desert surface. LiDAR scans conducted over the last 2 years have traced these faint lines across the floodplain and upland drainages, revealing patterns that can't be seen from ground level. The channels branch and reconnect, curving along the terrain to capture runoff from sudden summer storms. Optical dating of sediments confirms that these features date back to the height of Chaco's construction, aligning with the period when the massive multi-story great houses were built. The goal was not to redirect a river. There is no river here to control. Instead, the Chacoans designed a distributed system that captured bursts of monsoon water flowing through temporary washes. Check dams made of stone and earth slowed the fast-moving water, allowing silt to settle and moisture to seep into nearby fields, planted just beyond the reach of normal floods. Diversion gates, placed with precision, could be opened or closed to spread water across terrace plots, protecting crops from both drought and overflow. This was not irrigation in the traditional sense of a steady flow, but a flexible and strategic method that stored water in the soil rather than in open reservoirs. Field notes from early 20th century surveyors described the remains as puzzling: low stone lines, shallow depressions, and what seemed like random piles of cobble. Only through modern mapping and sediment testing did the true pattern come into view. These features are the remnants of a water control system built to trap and retain every possible drop in a landscape where water meant survival. Recent geomorphological research using optically stimulated luminescence has precisely dated the construction and maintenance of these systems to the Bonito phase, confirming their importance in supporting the population and ceremonial life that defined Chaco's golden age. The scale of the work is unmistakable. Canal segments stretch for hundreds of meters, some running parallel to main washes, others climbing gentle slopes to reach higher ground. In certain areas, layers of silt and charcoal show where repairs were made after major floods, proving that upkeep was continuous and organized. This was not a single project but a living system, adapted and rebuilt as the climate shifted between wet and dry extremes. The long-standing myth that Chaco was doomed by its desert environment doesn't hold up against this evidence. The people here did more than survive. They engineered their surroundings. Water control in Chaco wasn't a desperate act, but a deliberate and resilient strategy to handle uncertainty. Through canals and dams, they managed risk, stabilized harvests, and built a society that thrived where most would see only scarcity. Long before compasses were used, the builders of Chaco found their orientation in the sky. Across the canyon, the arrangement of walls, doorways, and plazas follows a deliberate design that is neither random nor purely functional. At sunrise on the winter solstice, light passes through specific openings, tracing a beam across the floor that lands exactly on a central hearth or altar. These alignments were intentional, calendars carved into architecture. Fajada Butte, rising above the canyon, holds the most famous of these celestial markers. 3 stone slabs lean against its face, casting narrow beams of sunlight onto a spiral carved into the rock. On the summer solstice, a single shaft of light cuts through the spiral's center. On the winter solstice, 2 beams frame it. Even the rare lunar standstill, which occurs every 18.6 years, can be tracked through the shifting patterns of shadow and light. This natural observatory required no metal or glass, only carefully placed stone and an intimate understanding of the sky's rhythm. The precision of the sun dagger is so consistent that archaeologists now use it to verify ancient calendars rather than the other way around. The alignment of Chaco's great houses shows the same level of planning. The central axis of Pueblo Bonito points directly toward the setting sun at the equinox. At Chetro the main plaza frames the sunrise on the winter solstice. These alignments extend beyond the canyon itself. Outlier sites located up to 100 kilometers away reflect the same orientations, as if the builders were mapping invisible lines across the landscape to connect earth and sky. Recent LiDAR mapping at the Casamaro site has revealed even more about this celestial framework. Twin roads, each nearly 9 meters wide, extend straight for kilometers, oriented toward the sunrise over Mount Taylor during the winter solstice, a mountain held sacred by Pueblo peoples for generations. Along these roads are crescent-shaped stone features called herraduras. Their placement and direction correspond not to settlements or fields, but to the rising sun at the year's turning point. Movement along these roads was more than travel. It was ritual, a journey timed with the rhythm of the sky. An archaeoastronomer, notebook in hand, stands before a digital overlay of LIDAR scans and solar azimuths. She explains how these alignments were calculated using nothing but horizon markers and careful seasonal observations. The result is a landscape that functioned as both a map and a calendar, guiding where and when people gathered. Each solstice and lunar standstill became a time for ceremony, bringing the community together and reinforcing their bond with the cosmos. These patterns of light and stone reveal more than technical skill. They show a worldview where engineering, ritual, and timekeeping are intertwined. The long-standing debate, whether Chaco's organization was based on centralized rule or ritual obligation, continues, but the evidence for coordinated specialist labor is now undeniable. The story of Chaco's engineering is just as much about its people as it is about its stonework. Preservation experts studying the great houses of Chaco Canyon have traced the survival of these walls through a consistent pattern that repeats room after room. The first stage of failure almost always begins with the roof. When beams begin to rot, from moisture, insects, or simply time, the ceiling collapses. Once that happens, debris quickly fills the room below with splintered beams, packed earth, and centuries of dust. Without the roof's weight to stabilize the walls, the masonry starts to shift. Veneer stones peel away, especially near corners and bases where water gathers. As this outer layer falls, the mud and rubble core is exposed, allowing rain and frost to dig deeper and speed up decay. In some rooms, the sequence is visible in the layers of fill, broken beams at the bottom followed by fallen stones, and finally a blanket of wind-blown silt sealing the room's history. The National Park Service has tracked this process in detail. Stabilization reports from the late 20th and early 21st centuries reveal that wall loss increases rapidly once the outer stone surface breaks away. Yearly photogrammetric scans confirm this. Intact veneer slows erosion almost completely, while exposed cores erode by centimeters each season. The thickest walls, sometimes more than a meter wide at the base, last centuries longer than thinner ones. Their solid mass and tight joints keep them standing even after upper stories collapse. LiDAR mapping has now revealed the monumental roads in sharp detail, showing their true width, straightness, and ceremonial alignments. Parallel corridors at the Casimiro site, carved stairways, and solstice alignments have all been documented in detail. There is widespread agreement that these were not ordinary transport routes. Their dimensions and orientations connect them to ritual movement and cosmological order. Water management features, canals, check dams, and diversion gates have been confirmed through sediment dating and geomorphological studies. The presence of an organized hydrological system during the Bonito phase is now well established. Still, some questions remain unresolved. Archaeologists continue to discuss whether the broad roads served only ceremonial functions or also supported large-scale transport of people and materials during building seasons or gatherings. The permanence of irrigation systems, whether they supported continuous agriculture or acted as flexible aids during droughts, also remains uncertain. The structure of Chacoan leadership continues to draw attention. Was there a central governing authority at Pueblo Bonito, or did power flow through ritual networks connecting equal communities? Even the purpose of the precise astronomical alignments raises questions about their daily importance and meaning. Among the many voices studying the canyon, one thing is certain. The evidence is strong, but the interpretation of Chaco's social world continues to evolve. Pueblo Bonito in Chaco Canyon once stood with more than 650 rooms and walls nearly 3 feet thick, built using the same core and veneer masonry that still stands after 1,000 years. Recent LiDAR scans from 2023 to 2025 have mapped wide, straight roads up to 9 meters across, carved into bedrock and aligned with solstice sunrises. Tree ring data confirms that over 200,000 pine beams were carried by hand from mountains more than 75 kilometers away. Archaeologists now agree on the presence of engineered water systems and specialized labor crews, though debate continues over whether the vast roads were ceremonial or practical and whether Chaco's authority was centralized or shared through networks. Today, the ruins of Chaco are more than remnants of a vanished society. They stand as evidence of large-scale planning, environmental control, and astronomical precision that challenge long-held ideas about early engineering. The real mystery that remains is not the lack of evidence, but how such a high level of coordination and complexity was achieved in a place that seems so harsh and isolated.